topic here that we're going to speak on today. We are over at GameIndustry.biz, okay? So they have an article. They just published this article today, okay? August the 13th. All right. So it says here, the big picture part 1. So there's going to be multiple articles, all right? It's just part 1. And it says here, I don't know if games are recession proof. And this is talking with former Sony Worldwide Studios head Sean Layden and analysts Matt Piscatella and Piers Harding Rose. They discuss the current issues facing the games industry, all right? So let's get into this. Let me pick this up a little. There you go. All right, there we go. All right. So, given the tumultuous changes in the game industry over the past few years, it's worth taking a moment to look at where we are and more importantly, where we're headed. In the first installment of this two-part feature, okay, so it's a two-part, former Sony Worldwide Studios chairman Sean Layden, Circana senior director Matt Piscatella, and Peer Analysis head of games research Piers Harding Rose offer some insight into the current status of the industry, beginning with worrying signs that U.S. customers are tightening their purse strings when it comes to the video games purchases. Essentially, quote, we have about a quarter of video game players who are saying they're planning on spending less, driven by a number of factors, said Piscatella, referencing recent Circana report. This is it. I believe we spoke on this before on the channel when he dropped this. Oh, yeah, this was back in April. So, yeah, like April, May. And we saw this chart that people have spent less on video games than any other selected industry, right? When you're talking about apparel, sports equipment, furniture, and things like that, video games saw the biggest decrease, okay, in spending. So, he notes that the trend is primarily down to increasing costs for things like food and housing that are causing people to look for savings, as well as the question marks surrounding the U.S. tariffs. Layden agrees, quote, in America right now, because of fears of recession, because of inflationary impacts, whether they're tariffs or just current industrial policy, everyone's feeling like I shouldn't spend as much as I used to spend. Just full stop right across the board. So, of course, gaming is going to be affected by that. Excuse me. Some of this turmoil in the international economy, adds Piscatella, and in particular in the U.S. economy, has people's feelings more uncertain, and uncertainty leads to a lot of people waiting on decisions, putting off big purchases, trying to better plan their finances. That's what we're seeing right now in the data. Okay? Quote, in this case, we have double the amount of people saying that they're planning on spending less than they are saying they're planning on spending more. That's a little bit of a red flag. This has led Circana to predict a decline around 4.7 for the U.S. games market in 2025, although Piscatella notes that in the current climate, these things can be challenging to forecast. Quote, if we ended up plus 5%, I wouldn't be shocked. If we ended up minus 10%, I wouldn't be surprised. There's so much uncertainty. Close quote. Now they move on to not recession-proof after all. So, in previous global downturns, like in 2008, games earned a reputation for being recession-proof, okay? So this is because whereas consumers tended to cut back on other forms of entertainment, in times of financial turmoil, like eating out or going out to the cinema, they mostly maintained their spending on games, which were seen as offering good value for money in terms of hours of enjoyment, okay? But given Circana's recent report into consumer spending plans, that doesn't appear to be the case anymore. Quote, I don't know if games are recession-proof, said Piscatella. I think play is recession-proof. But the business models, I don't know if they'll be recession-proof, especially this time around. We're going to have to find out, okay? So if you look at that there, he thinks play, okay? Not games. playing is recession proof, okay? And he's gonna dive into it a little bit more down the line. In short, given the wide availability of low-cost subscription services, there we go, and free-to-play games, we may be in a situation where consumers don't feel they have to spend money on games when times are hard. Look at all the games like subscriptions that he's talking about, right? PS Plus, Game Pass. They're adding a lot of value to those subscription services. Also, on top of that, you add the fact that we getting free games, such as Where Winds Meet. If I don't know if most of y'all was here when I was playing the beta to Where Winds Meet. I don't know if y'all played the beta, but that's a free-to-play games. And it was so polished. It was so good that I was sitting there thinking to myself, how is this game free? Like, literally. The game is that good. It offers so much. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how is this game even free? It's crazy. When you look at it like that, the potential of these free games, where they can go, right? As long as they put the right amount of money behind it, if the game is good, it could blow up, which is what usually happens with a lot of these free-to-play games. Let's continue, though. So we're here. Quote, the market now is completely different to when the last major recession happened, says Harding Rose. There's so much free content out there. People don't necessarily have to spend in-game or buying premium games. Free-to-play games are a very effective way of spending your time without spending a lot of money. Okay? Lower this just. Without spending a lot of money. Okay, so we're here. The whole idea of the recession proof is a bit of a misnomer, I think, because previously it was predominantly premium games. Things have changed a lot since then, okay? Additionally, looking at the wider picture, there are clear indications that the video game market is now maturing after years of rapid growth. There were signs of this back in 2019 when shares in game companies were being sold off in mass, and a Bloomberg report predicted imminent decline. But the COVID-19 pandemic saw those forecasts upend as millions of people stuck at home in lockdown turned to video games to stave off boredom. That's very, very crucial right there. This part right here, okay, you got to pay attention to. Because in 2019, before the pandemic hit, they were looking at the forecast of video games in a decline. Okay? Decline. If it wasn't for the pandemic, who knows where we'll be right now in as far as the whole video game industry. That's basically what that small little paragraph is telling us right there. Who knows where we'll be? Because they're absolutely right. Pandemic, everybody's on lockdown mode. What you gonna do? Watch movies all day? No. You're gonna play some games. You got a lot of sports fans out there play Madden, NBA, hockey, soccer, you got everything. Shoot, Call of Duty, you had everything, right? So all that whole fan base of each particular genre was home, locked down, spending money on video games. Okay? So that might have actually, listen, man, that might have actually saved video games if you really listen to what they're saying here. So let's keep going. However, most of that new influx of players didn't stick around once lockdown has lifted. See? Quote, the actual audience is about 10% smaller than it was at that peak, says Harding Rose. Although he notes that many of those fair weather gamers weren't heavy spenders. Piscatella says that 2021 remains the high point in terms of the U.S. game market. Quote, if you look at the comparison in spending between now and 2021, it's been absolutely amazingly stable. We went from a growth market to a mature market overnight. The difference now is where people are spending their money. Quote, we have much more prevalence of the mobile space, of the free to play space, and a emphasization, of the console space, says Piscatella. Okay? Especially when you look at younger and less affluent consumers. They are choosing to go towards easily accessible games on devices they already own. Listen, you look at this right here. It clearly tells us where the industry is going. It clearly tells us. And now you look at the whole console warring. You look at PlayStation putting games everywhere. This is what I'm trying to get y'all to understand. All this this is Sean Layden, Matt Piscatella, and Rose Pierre. Harding Rose, excuse me. Three key people when it comes to the gaming industry. Piscatella and Rose are, in basically know all the numbers, right? So they see where the market is going, where it's been, where it's heading, where it is right now. They see everything. They get all the information. And we all know who Sean Layden is. I don't even got to go in that, right? So we're listening to three very key and important people in this industry, right? Now you pay attention to what Sony's doing, what Xbox is doing, okay? This is what they're looking at. Everything that these people are talking about right here, right now, is what these corporations are paying attention to. Right here. So it doesn't make sense as a business to stay committed to a single platform. It just doesn't. Whether you like it or not, it does not make any sense. Okay? So that's why I said, once I started seeing all the movement, Helldivers going to Xbox, the job posting that was up that they put, everything, even up to the latest Helldivers 2 trailer with the ODST, right? Halo collaboration. It's all part of the plan. They're trying to figure out different ways to make money. Because like they said, the premium games, that's what it used to be. Okay? We didn't have free-to-play games back then. Now we do. And a lot of free-to-play games are actually just as good as a AAA budgeted game. So you got to think to yourself why these corporations are heading in that direction. You look at these sales numbers for these games like Death Stranding, 1.4. Astrobot just selling it took almost a year for Astrobot to hit 2.5 million sales. And it's basically a one and done. Death Stranding, one and done. You don't get to see more and more money down the line. It's not a live service game. It's not free to play. There's no open market for skins and things like that. So once the money dries up, the money dries up. On to the next game. They're looking at that business logic, strategy as not affordable anymore. They're not looking at that as 1.5 being good sales numbers for a big AAA budgeted game like Death Stranding 2. They're not looking at that no more. It's over. So pay attention. When people speak, I'm trying to tell y'all, pay attention. When people like this are talking, you got to pay attention. And that's why I wanted to bring you the article right here today. Because these are the type of people you got to listen to. Okay? You might see them as haters or whatever it is. Or they just doing that. Listen, they breaking down the market to you. All of that is included. Shareholders, the market, stocks, everything is included. Okay? Everything. That's what they're looking at. When you pay attention to all that, the stock market, the free to play, how much those games are making. Bro, I told you how much Marvel Rivals made in a month. And it was a free to play game. And they're still making money to today. You see what I'm saying? So you think back, Jim Ryan talking about 12 live service games That's what he's paying attention to. Okay? Not that I'm agreeing that, yes, you should have said 12. Yes, yes. Not that I'm agreeing. I'm just trying to put you in his mindset. This is what he's paying attention to. I need a live service game to blow up because this ain't looking good. Point blank, period. Let me continue on. Y'all make sure I smash that like button. The double-edged sword is of free-to-play. We're here now. There's an art. Oh, and if you see, I didn't even mention Fortnite. We don't even gotta mention Fortnite. There's an argument that free-to-play games have devalued video games overall, making them seem like something consumers don't necessarily have to spend money on, especially in times of financial hardship. But Harding Rose point out that they've also been a key driver of success. Quote, if everything has stayed pay to play at a premium rate, just wouldn't have the size of audience and the scale of the market, he says. In game monetization is worth 77% of the total market. Hello? It's right there. The answers are right there in front of your face. Quote, if we didn't have any free content, what would the market look like? It would look like probably a quarter of the size it is right now. Realistically, I mean, I might have grown a bit. It might have grown a bit, but nothing like almost $200 billion in spending. Point. He could have dropped. Listen, man, drop the mic. Go home. Because he's absolutely right. When you look at these people, I'm going to continue on right now, right? We're up to this part. I'm going to continue on. When you look at how mature gamers like us, right, including myself and the rest of us who are 30 plus years old, right? What do you often see? I believe one of y'all said it. I don't have to buy every game. Exactly. See what I'm saying? Now, everybody thinks like that. Everybody. I don't like that game. I don't got to spend my money on that game. Yeah, but that studio done spend over $250 million, $350 million on budget for that game. Can't just buy it or try it out and have a good time. Maybe you like it, you know, give it a go. Nah, I don't got to do that. It's my money. It's my $70. I don't want to buy that game. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like that character. I don't like the world setting. I don't like the type of game it is. I don't like any of that. So I'm not buying it. Now everybody thinks like that. You got to remember that. It's not just you. So what are these companies to do at that point? They're trying to cater to people who think they don't got to spend money on a certain game because they don't like it. It doesn't appeal. It's not appealing to them. It's not the certain type of game that appeals to them that they're used to playing. Like, what do you want them to do? And then they turn around and look across the street. This is why I used to do all those references. This is why. When I told y'all, Stoney looking across the street over there, they see Fortnite, they see Roblox, they see all these free Marvel Rivals, all these free to games to play, having a party, while they're sitting back over here listening to their fans talk about, we want more single player games. What, are you going to buy it? Well, that depends, Sony, if I like the game or not. You see what I'm saying? Does that make any sense to you? It wouldn't to me. So again, before I continue, was Jim Ryan wrong talking about 12 live servers? Yes. You can't exaggerate because you're going to turn people off that way. If he would have brought that number down, he would have said, we're really focusing on big, at 3 games to be live service that we potentially see as huge live service games, you know, and give a good speech. He could have had something. But the fact that he went on and said 12, it turned everybody off. Nobody want to hear nothing after that. because PlayStation fans aren't used to hearing words like that, and it turned everybody off, and it just the whole live service focus, it just went out the window because of that. So let's continue on here. The trouble, perhaps, is that much of the spending is focused on a relatively small number of titles. Piscatella points out that the behemoths like Fortnite, Roblox, Call of Duty are amazing at funneling in players and keeping there with social hooks. And because the players have invested so much time into the games, these games now become the default. This is the video game for that audience, so they're locked in, right? This goes back to Battlefield 6, okay? This is what I'm talking about. Call of Duty is not going to fall from the top from one day to the next just because Battlefield 6 had over 500,000 concurrent plays on Steam, because they got 1 million players who pre-ordered, 2 million players who pre-ordered. That still doesn't mean that Call of Duty will will just fall from grace. Like that's not what it is. Like I told ya, a giant like Call of Duty, it will take years for a game to come in and knock it down. So like I said, Battlefield needs to focus on the now. Stop looking towards the future. Come out with a great game. Focus on that game, and you got to build on it little by little. If it takes you 15 years to get to that full max potential that you're trying to get to, then let it take you the 15 years. You got to start somewhere. You can't rush the process. Call of Duty's been here. They've earned that spot. So you got to try to knock them out. But it's not just going to happen from one day to the next. Where was I? Call of Duty. Right. Let's keep going. At the same time, he notes there's been an exponential growth in the number of new releases. And if you look all in at game spending, it being flat the last several years as more and more games get released, then that math tells you the average game is making less than it was a few years ago. And on top of that, the concentration of those revenues is being allocated more towards the biggest of the big, the Fortnite, the Minecraft, Roblox, Grand Theft Autos of the world. That's key. So, you do all the math, and what you get is, oh boy, the crunch is very real. I'm telling you, man. These people, man, they hitting it on the nail. They hitting the nail on the head. Sorry. Hold on. We'll continue right now. Hold on. All right. Let's continue on here, people. Yet, at the same time, that consumers are increasingly gravitating towards titles that are free at the point of entry, there's also been a somewhat contradictory push to raise premium games prices to $80, notably with Mario Kart World. Quote, that upfront price is such a barrier to get people to even try a game, says Piscatella. Because why am I going to spend $80 this game when Fortnite is here and I can just log in and everyone's there and all my stuff's there? That's why I refer to those games as the black hole games, because they suck all the time and money out of the market. Now they get to the $80 game dilemma. It's a strange cognitive dissonance, says Layden, of the way a generation has been shown they don't need to spend money on games at the same time as publishers are saying games should be more expensive. He points out that the retail price of premium games has remained stubbornly consistent over the past 20 years or so, despite the twin factors of inflation and exponentially rising development costs. Quote, I think it's because everyone's afraid, he says. No one wants to be the first one to raise the price because you're afraid to lose traffic. So what you do is just end up eating into your operating income, your profit margin. There were more sports cars in the parking lot in the PS1 era than they were in the PS4 era. Because if you're selling 20 million units at $60 for something that only cost you 10 million to make, that's different than selling 20 million units at $60 for something that cost you 160 millions to make. Can we drop a bomb for Charlene? Can we do that, please? That's it. 1 million copies sold today is not 1 million copies sold 20 years ago. You see what I'm saying? You see what I be telling y'all? But I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Right? It is not the same. So when I keep telling you 1.4, that's not good enough. 1.3, that's not good enough. That's what I keep saying. Yo, why can't the first week, why can't we see 2 million as the first week? Why can't we do that? And I told you when Square Enix came out that they sold 3 million copies in the first week of Final Fantasy 16. And they weren't satisfied. Remember, I told you, I brought you the article and I told you this is why they're not satisfied. Why? Because they're barely making profit. They barely made profit. And that was with 3 million copies in the first week. So what are we talking about? 1.3, 1.4 being success when you're spending up in $250 million to make the game. You see what I'm saying? And once the money dries up, you're gone. You're out of there. Next. You ain't got no monetization in that game. You ain't selling no skins. You ain't doing none of that. Astrobot could have easily put a shop in that game so you could buy up all the skins of all the old characters like Crash Bandicoot. Everybody that you save in the game, they could have put a store and made you actually purchase those skins. But they didn't do that. You find them, it's yours. You keep it. See what I'm saying? So, like, this is what I be trying to tell everybody. Like, bro, why can't we see 2 million copies at least, at the bare minimum? First week sales, 2.2 million first week. Why can't we start seeing that? Everything has become 1 point whatever, 1.2, 1.3. That's all we start seeing now. That's not enough. For a big single-player AAA title, that's not enough. Sorry to break it to you. Astrobot, after all that recognition, right now should be sitting at 5 million copies at least. Five. People say there's over 85 million consoles out there. This is a family-friendly game. Everybody could play it. There's no violence, no blood, no horror, nothing. Everybody could play it. From your youngest son up until all up until your grandmother. Everybody in the line could play the game. This game should be at least at 5 million copies sold right now. People are satisfied with 2 million copies sold. You see what I'm saying? And the only reason Astrobot gets away with that is because it was a AA budgeted game. So they probably didn't spend that much money on making the game. But that's not even the point. That's not even the point. Let me continue on with this, okay? Because I could keep going. We're here now, okay? In hindsight, Layden says the price of games should have been bumped up gradually with every generation. Instead, the industry has thrown everything at growth, thinking that as long as we grow, even though we're not making money, somehow we can't die. But we're now at a tipping point, he thinks. The cost of construction is just way too high. You're going to spend over $200 million to build a game. Your margins are super tight. Unless you can expect to sell 25 million. I'm done. I'm done.
Finish him.
But I don't know what I'm talking about. I told you. And this is my first time reading this article, by the way. I told y'all. I don't be proofreading nothing. I read as I go. This show goes on as I go. Okay? This ain't pre-scripted. This ain't pre-recorded. I'm here. I was just talking about. This is it right here. Hello? This is what I'm talking about. The point of this is to make a profit. It's not to settle for 1.4, 1.5, and at the end of the day, at the end of the lifespan of the game, you ended up selling 4 million units or something. Listen, you are in business to make profit, big profit, okay? You're not in business to make, $5 million of profit. That's not what these people are in business for. These people are trying to make, 25 plus million in profits. They want big numbers. It's not happening. But you know who is making that much money? Free-to-play games. Live service games. That's who's making that profit. This is crazy, bro. I don't know what else to say. Let me continue on here. Unless you're a rock star, you should not expect to sell 25 million units. Listen. You selling over 50 million. We talking about millions of copies being sold for GTA 6. You think GTA is going to have a problem selling 25 million copies? Let's keep going here. Industry leaders have been trying to compensate for the exorbitant rise in game development costs in other ways. Quote, they said, okay, if we maintain the price, wait, where am I? If we maintain the price and then we nickel and dime you with the DLC, microtransactions, battle pass, season pass, whatever you want to call it, and try to make up the excess there. Yo, shout out to my brother Michael West in the building. Mike, salute to you, brother. Horizon done 35 million or 38 million in total. Yeah, that's a total of Horizon as a franchise. Yeah, they got like 35 million or so. Yeah, you're right. Not one game made 35. The whole franchise. And that's it, like going to PC, being on PlayStation and all this stuff, PS4, PS5, the remastered, all that stuff. It accumulated up to 35 million. So yeah. Where was I? Here. At the same time, I appreciate you, bro. At the same time, there's been an emphasis on deluxe edition of games that can easily cost $100 or more, pumped up with extra skins and weapons that entail almost a zero cost for the publisher, says Layden. So they've already been kind of moving the medium price point up anyway, okay? That's what they do with these $100 stuff. Listen to what he says there, okay? $100 or more for the deluxe editions and things like that. And they give you these extra skins and weapons that entail almost zero cost for the publisher. Okay? Let's keep going. But the shift towards making $80 the standard price for premium games has already met with fierce feedback from players. Notably, Microsoft walked back its decision to charge $80 for The Outer Worlds 2, which would have been the first Xbox game to debut at the new price point. Clearly, there's the potential that the top end of the market could be diminished by setting higher prices with fewer players willing to stump the cash. Okay? Hold on. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, we here. Quote, I think what shrinks the top end of the market is not the price point, counters Harding Rose. It's more the actual cost of developing content. The sheer expense of AAA development, maintaining the team numberings in their hundreds or even over 1,000, means not only that just a handful of companies can compete at this level, but also that innovation will necessarily drain away from the higher end of games as publishers become more risk averse. There's another key example right there, okay? That right there. When you see what most of us keep saying time and time again, you know, there's nothing new. There's no fresh games out there, right? And that's why, and that's because of what he says here. Publishers are becoming more risk averse. They're taking less risks because these games are taking much more money to make, and they don't know if these console gamers are going to actually buy the game. Because if you flop, it's not a good look. Chances are your studio's closing down, you're getting fired, something is happening. So what do these people do? They take less risks. They see what's working out in the market and they say, let's copy that, let's do something like that. That's why we're seeing the same things happening, the same games over and over. Right? It's because of things like this. Okay? Quote, so the consumer is not necessarily getting exposed to the most dynamic and interesting development in the game space, he says. Aiden agrees. I think it's going to be harder for innovation to occur at the price point because when you get to that kind of cost, 200 to 250 million to make a game, in most studios, risk tolerance goes to zero. Right there. He's saying it to you plain and simple right there. As such, anything targeting the $80 price bracket is likely to either be a sequel or something that's similar to another game that sold well, a comparable. I gotta drop another bomb.
Finish him.
I promise you, I haven't read this. I have not read this article yet. I promise you, I haven't. I'm just saying. Okay? Let's continue on here. Quote, sadly, anyone who's trying to break a new IP at that price point, at that cost point, I'm not saying it can't be done. But there are a lot of long, hard nights during that development cycle if you're trying to push out a new IP at 200 million into that price point. That's called working without a net. Whatever happens, it feels like the higher end of the market will inevitably get higher still, or at least attempt to. Piscatella compares it with how the gamepad market has evolved from a space that sold a wide range of affordable pads to one that's almost entirely centered around the deluxe and extremely expensive devices. Quote, they started realizing that the console consumer is getting older and more affluent, okay? He says they started putting out higher priced gamepads, more premium gamepad. And now these are the devices that are leading the market. It's similar thinking when it comes to $80 games, Piscatella explains. We have an audience that is not growing on the console side. We have an average console buyer that is older and more affluent than 5 years ago. They'll still pay it, and then the rest of the audience will eventually get there through either discounting or promotion over time. Okay? Wait for a sale, basically. Those gamers who say, I'm going to wait for a sale. So it's going to work for the big games, for the games that are successful. It's going to work well. He noted that the expensive deluxe edition of games already perform admirably at launch in comparison with standard edition. Quote, the versions of those games that will sell better are higher priced versions because you have a less price sensitive consumer there on day one. And the games that don't drop the price quickly. You price promote quickly, but at least you capture some of those price sensitive consumers at launch. Okay, so there that goes for the $80. Now they move on to a wild west of pricing. Okay, stay with me. I told y'all, man, I'm not playing. I have not read this article. I'm telling you, a wild west of pricing. But $80 games are only part of the story. Across the high, mid, and low ranges, pricing has become far more dynamic. Quote, I think what we're seeing is more diversity of launch pricing and promotional strategy post launch than we've ever seen before, said Piscatella. We're seeing games being released at all ends of the spectrum when it comes to pricing, and folks are going to charge for their game what they think they can get most most get away with, okay? Some games you look at and go, what are you thinking? Because internally, they've convinced themselves that we have the secret sauce going to be the biggest game in the world, or because their financial plan demands that they have big revenue day one, even though everyone on the team might know that's a little bit of a pipe dream, aka Concord. He reckons this pattern of diverse pricing will continue. I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation, he says. Everyone kind of dabbles and tries to figure it out, and then it gets optimized into oblivion. Like we see on the Steam summer sales now, where it used to be the wild west of discounting and pricing all over the board. And now you pretty much know what you're going to get every summer when the sale comes around. Piscatella continues. There's a lot of vibes-based pricing analysis that goes into launch pricing these days. Of course, there's a lot of very smart people doing it, all kinds of charts and graphs, but because of the volatility, because there's so many different ways of going about it, a lot of times it boils down to, I don't know, this feels like a $50 game, this feels like a $70 game, which is the best way to do it. But that's the way it's still done a lot of the times, okay? To confuse things even further, now have subscription models that completely upend traditional ideas of pricing and contribute to the idea among the general public that games should cost hardly anything at all. I'm not a big supporter of the Netflix of gaming idea, says Layden. I think it is a danger. I mean, look what happened to music. In the popular mind, music costs nothing. Music should be free. Spotify, what is that? It's $15 a month or something, but virtually no one buys music anymore. The one silver lining, he says, is that music artists have an adjacent market in the form of touring, allowing them to rely more heavily on ticket sales and merchandise as key revenue system. The problem with gaming is all we have is launch. That's it. No one wants to pay money to come into the studio and watch people code. All of this is why he thinks putting games on subscription services on day one is bad for business. No lesser light than Strauss Zelnick himself has said GTA is never going on a subscription service day one, Layden pointed out. He acknowledges that the situation might be different for indie developers who crave discovery above all else. But for AAA games, he questions the idea of launching day one on subscription services like Xbox Game Pass. Now, that idea is out there. However, it's difficult to go back. Can't unring the bell, right? But beyond the financial wisdom that makes new games available for free at launch, Layden worries about the change in ethos behind it. Quote, there's a lot of debates going on. Game Pass profitable? Is Game Pass not profitable? What does that mean? That's really not the right question to ask anyway. Quote, continues. You can do all kinds of financial jiggery, pokery for any sort of corporate service to make it look profitable if you wanted to. You take enough costs out and say that's off the balance sheet, and oh, look, it's profitable now. The real issue for me on things like Game Pass is it healthy for the developer? Okay? This right here goes back to what I was saying before. Okay? when I used to tell, remember I used to tell y'all, you know, these developers that fall under the Microsoft umbrella, they can't be happy going to work every day. We might see that as a dream job to make video games and create it and things like that. But remember, when you're going into an office, a job, a career will always be that, right? As much as you love it, you still got to go to work. If you have a workplace that is not suitable, that is not, uplifting, that you know that you're not going to benefit from all the fruits of your labors, like putting your games out there and seeing how much it can sell, right? No, you're not going to get that because you're under Microsoft. Your games go day and day on Game Pass. So that right there is shaving off what could potentially be from the difference from a 1 million sales to 10 million sales for your games. We don't know, right? So this is what he's talking about, and this is what I've been telling y'all. The developers under Microsoft don't get that opportunity. It's I told y'all, it must be sad going to work every day if you are in any of those studios that are owned by Microsoft. It gotta be sad because it's almost like you working for nothing, bro. You see what I'm saying? It's almost like you working for nothing. We don't know if there's any type of incentives. If your game sells 15 million, you get a $250,000 bonus or something. We don't know. And I'm talking about development teams outside of Game Pass, outside of Microsoft. They might be doing incentives like that. Or if your game does well, you get a bonus and this, that, and the third. Who knows if Microsoft is doing that for their developers? Chances are they're not doing things like that. Why? Because they know they're not going to sell a good amount of copies. They're looking to expand Game Pass. That's what Microsoft is looking forward to. Right? So we bring those big games out, right? Like Doom, Starfield, and the rest of them. That's what they're expecting the people to gravitate to and go now and subscribe to Game Pass, rather than you liking what you see and paying the $70 for it. That's the difference. So yes, it's not healthy for developers. It is not healthy. I don't care who says otherwise. That is the bottom line. Those are facts. You just compare one of those developers to one of the developers at PlayStation. Santa Monica. Compare them to any of these people up in here. It's two totally different feelings when they go to work. Guarantee. So, like he also taking shots right here, by the way. When you take enough cost out and say that the balance sheet, off the balance sheet and say, look, it's profitable. Remember when they said that it was profitable, that Microsoft said that within that sheet, it does not include, what he said? It does not include, the cost of their first party title AAA budgets. It doesn't include it. That's what Sean Layden is referring to. So of course it's going to be profitable if you're not including that, which you should be including it, but they're not doing that. So therefore it's profitable. So he taking shots right there. Hopefully y'all with me, right? Hopefully I'm making some sense, right? Let's keep going though. Under the subscription model, the developer essentially becomes a wage slave. Oh, there it is. He argues. Wait. They're not creating value, putting it in the marketplace, hoping it explodes and profit sharing and overages and all that nice stuff. It's just you pay me X amount of dollars an hour. I built your game. Here, go put it on your service. I don't think it's really surprising for game developers. I'm done.
Finish him.
But I don't know what I'm talking about. I promise you. I promise you. Those same words I've said here on this channel already. I promise you. People like Michael West, I know, could attest to this because he's almost with me every single show. At least the ones that he could attend, he's with me almost every single day. I know I said things like this in my show. I know it. Guarantee you, because I remember. I was there when I said it. So I know I said it. But I don't know what I'm talking about. I told you to stop playing with me. I told you I stop playing. I do this. I do this. So when I tell you that job listing that they put out, when it says Xbox, you don't need to go around it. It says Xbox, okay? It's there for a reason. It's not there for you to toy around the word and act like it's not there and pretend that they're talking about this and this. No. They're talking about exactly what the job posting says. Xbox. That's exactly what it says. Okay? When I keep asking you where the hell Cory Barlog is at, when I keep asking you when the hell we going to see something from Naughty Dog, I mean that. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not just saying that just to say it. This ain't rage bait. I don't do that. I talk to you how I feel. Okay? That's what I do. That's the difference. Maybe because you're used to what YouTube is, and you're used to seeing people rage bait and do all this stuff, whatever, for views or whatever it is. That ain't me. Sorry to break it to you. I speak to you from how my point of view, my perspective, 100%. That's it. Let me keep going here. So this is the end of the article, I believe. Where am I? I don't think it's inspiring. Okay, good. So it is the end. Part 2 to follow, okay? In the initial versions of this article, several quotes at the end of the section, the dilemma. Okay, so this is just the breakdown of the article. So this is part 1 right here. Let's wait and see what part 2 has to offer. And you best believe when part 2 comes out, I will be bringing that also to the channel as well. Let me know how you feel about everything that I've read to you here today, okay? Any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it is, let me know in the comments. And let's talk about this, all right? With that being said, it's your boy, the gifted one here. I'm going to catch y'all next one. I'm gone.